Hello, everybody. It's Max with Crypto Talk now. There's some news that basically broke out about, for instance, banking giants and New York Fed start a 12-week digital dollar pilot. Well, if anything, how about this for measure? Quant, right? Getting together, Gilbert Verdian, and so on, doing a Zoom meeting for a digital pound. Well, without further ado, let's go ahead and kick it into today's Quant coverage. And as you can see right here, we're going to start things off with this particular news piece. And it's just like what I mentioned before. You have banking giants and New York Fed, of course, start off this 12-week digital dollar pilot. And you may be wondering, well, what does this have to do with the likes of Quant? We're going to get right into that. So if anything, it mentions a few of these key things here. For one, it mentions that global banking giants, of course, are starting a 12-week digital dollar pilot with the Fed Reserve Bank of New York. The participants announced basically last Tuesday. Citigroup is there, HSBC. Again, look at their particular connection with the likes of Quant. MasterCard, again, Gilbert's background. MasterCard, Wells Fargo, you name it, right? Are among the financial companies participating in the experiment alongside New York's Fed Innovation Center. They said in a statement, the project, which is called the Regulatory Liability Network, will be conducted in a test environment and use simulated data. Now, a little bit more in regards to this particular pilot will test how banks use a digital dollar in regards to these particular tokens in a common database, and basically that's supposed to help speed up payments. I'm literally thinking of the likes of, like, for instance, Ripple's XRP, some of these other ones, right? Stellar Lumens, right? Get where I'm going with this. Early this month, Michelle Neal, head of the New York Fed's market group, said it sees promise in using central bank digital dollar to speed up settlement time in currency markets. Now, in relation to what's also going on, right, over on the other side of the pond, if you will, there's this. So, for instance, this particular meeting is in regards to creating a digital pound. And the key takeaway that I want to share with you guys is the big players that are at this particular meeting, right? This is obviously a Zoom style call / meeting. You have Gilbert Verdian and so on. And like the title states, and shout out, of course, to Quant Papa for providing this. Like the title states, been waiting since 2008. You'll hear Gilbert Verdian, CEO of Quant, basically outlining how since 2008 he's been waiting to create this. It's something that personally affects him. Again, you can see the passion behind it. But a few key things I want to mention here. I want to draw your attention to the lady in the top left. So, for instance, if you're wondering who these particular people are, this lady right here, Helen Disney, she is, for instance, the CEO of Unblocked, which is basically a hub, of course, like you see here, for blockchain events, education, and information, and a co-founder of GovChain Research. She was listed in Innovate Finance's 2016 Women in FinTech Power List and has been referred to by Barclays as a, quote, blockchain guru. On top of that, she is also a member of Tech UK and of its DLT working group and a co-founder of the British Blockchain and Frontier Technologies Association. Now, here's the thing. You can read more about this if you want. You read her entire grocery list of a resume and so on. Pretty impressive, right? But if anything, you like the idea that you're seeing, the likes of Quant, right? Gilbert Verdian networking with these big players. A little bit more who are, is basically at this particular meeting. I just pulled this particular one straight from Google. But anyway, Vincent Meal, basically he is a tech innovation strategy senior manager focusing, of course, on digital assets custody, and get this, CBDC at Accenture, right? So there's him. How about this particular lady? So hold on a second. So we basically mentioned him. This other lady, I believe, is in the top right, okay, on the screen. So with her, is Jana Pache, and she basically is the founder of, like you see right here, Markets Evolution, a consultancy specializing in financial markets, innovation, and basically helps in helping financial institutions and fintechs to define, develop, and execute their commercial strategies in a highly regulated environment. Listen to this at the bottom. She is a founding member of the Digital Pound Foundation. See, all this stuff kind of makes sense when you think about it and you look more into the backgrounds of these particular people at these big meetings. But yeah, a little bit more in regards to who she is. A member of the Whitechapel think tank and an active contributor to its future payments working group and to their development of policy and advocacy around the evolution of the UK payments infrastructure and the case for a UK central bank digital currency, aka CBDC. You could kind of, make the connection, if you will. All right, a little bit more. This other particular gentleman, Sean Devaney, listen to the background on him. So he's a vice president for strategy for banking and financial markets. Sean is vice president of CGI, who basically specializes in the payments domain with significant exposure to regulatory change, payment strategy, and the outsourcing industry. He has 20 years of experience in the financial systems, or I should say financial services industry, ranging, of course, from the design of outsourced check processing operations or IPSL to a lead role in the development of the UK's faster payment service and current account switching service, as well as having responsibility for development, of course, of CGI's banking, so on and so forth. Some of these key terms, right? Check processing operations, UK's faster payment service, current account switching service. I'm literally thinking of, like, for instance, faster payments, Ripple's XRP, who's behind, for instance, helping out with, what's the premier operating system to make all this to basically connect? Overledger, right? Connecting any to any. That's the key thing. Again, some of these people who are at this particular meeting. A little bit more. This particular person here, for instance, his name is Lee Schneider. Draw your attention to the top middle far right, I should say. Middle far right section. Lee Schneider, a little bit background on him. States he's general counsel at Ava Labs. Lee Schneider serves as general counsel, which is, for Ava Labs, a leading blockchain software company. Mr. Schneider is responsible for all aspects of the legal function as well as the company's government's affair initiatives. Now, with everything that's basically happened recently with this whole FTX fiasco, mess, and so on, I like the idea that we're having somebody that is responsible for all aspects of the legal functionalities of how all this works. Basically, you want to see that and have them connected, for instance, with the likes of Quant. Again, the networking with these particular people to get this whole financial system underway. Again, the flip of the switch. If anything, you're bringing in the right people, even if you don't agree necessarily with the likes of CBDCs. All right, a little bit more. This guy, David Putz, becomes Billing Group's Chief Growth Officer. Again, this happened 2 years ago, but here's the thing I want to point out. And again, in regards to him, you definitely see him on the bottom left of that particular screen. In regards to him, like it mentions, David Putz becomes Billings Group's Chief Growth Officer. This is about 2 years ago, but here's the key takeaway that I want to point out for you guys. It was 2 years ago. So Billings shifts focus from pilots to revenue growth. And if anything, we're recently seeing the whole thing here in the United States, especially in New York, when it comes to these particular pilots, right? But how about this? The UK already shifted from that. And that's where I feel, personally, where it's on some of these recorded videos or on our live show where we discuss how the United States is basically, they're showing up late to the show. I mean, for them to be, ISO 222 compliant and come on board and so on with our systems here in the US by 2025, again, that's a little late. They need to, go ahead and kickstart this, get ahead of the curve, if you will. And if anything, I think the U.S. will recognize what's going on and see the growth and the the use case, if you will, for what's going on with these technologies. And if anything, jumpstart it or kickstart it in full gear, maybe, go up a couple years. Hopefully sometime next year instead of waiting until 2025. But my point is what we see here. So, for instance, this particular guy, David Putz, for instance, it states right here, as part of this new strategy on January 10th, again, 2019, David Putz will move full-time into the Billen Group and take the role of Chief Growth Officer on the board of directors. He was previously the part-time chairman of Billen and successfully led efforts to secure Billen's FCA e-money registration, gain investment, and cooperation on projects with FIS Global, and to serve major clients such as Philip Morris. Again, you see how, he had all this experience in the past, but already 2 years ago, or let's face it, almost 3 years ago now, that we're almost into 2023, he basically decided to go over to, where the actual revenue growth is and so on. And when you see his background and what he could bring to the likes of, let's face it, a European pound, I think it's big. And to see, for instance, Gilbert Verdian networking with all these guys with all this experience and all this knowledge, I think, if anything, it's a big win for the likes of Quant. All right, a little bit more, because I know it seems like I've just mentioned quite a few of these people, but if anything, I want you guys to have an idea about the backgrounds of these people. That is what's significant here. Susan Friedman, all right? This is the lady in the bottom middle, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it is. So in regards to her, she is International Policy Counsel at Ripple. Literally, we were just talking about, briefly about XRP and so on. So Susan Friedman is International Policy Counsel, like I mentioned, at Ripple. Prior to Ripple, Friedman was a senior advisor to CFTC Chairman Heath Tarbert in his previous capacity as Treasury Assistant Secretary in International Markets. In this role, she regularly advised and collaborated with Treasury officials on matters including international financial services regulation, investment security, and trade. Again, another great person to have part of this particular meeting and so on, because it's laying down the framework for, again, regulation and all the compliancy in that regard. I think, if anything, one of the key things I want to mention, and I've seen other content creators and so on mention these key things, that is, I think it's just like literally maybe around the corner or within the next few months, you're going to see the likes of, whether it's here in the United States or especially like in the UK, for instance, these people who are into crypto, or these governments that are trying to use some of the technologies of crypto and so on, are going to be tapping these people on the shoulders saying, look, we trust you guys. And if anything, we want to get your knowledge and so on. We want to, see what you can bring to the table, because in this particular space, there's not a lot of people we could trust anymore. We feel as though we can trust you. I get the whole thing with the SEC case. That's a different story. Literally, we're talking about what they can bring to the table, especially when it comes to the likes of, for instance, a digital pound in the UK. A little bit more in regards to some of these people's backgrounds before we kick into this particular clip that I want you guys to see. Alex Prevero, he is the guy in the bottom far right. What he brings is just this, like what you see right here. His background, right? So Alex leads the firm's digital law group in the UK and US and EMEA, specializes in business and digital transformation, sourcing projects, and commercial technology contracting, including smart legal contracting across all sectors. Again, a little bit more of the legal perspective, digital law, right? You're not just getting some Joe Schmo. Again, real big people with big backgrounds and huge connections. Quant at the forefront of it all. All right, now let's get right into this actual video. I know I gave you a lot of their particular backgrounds, but if anything, I should say, I want people to understand that Quant has literally, gone to bat with providing the best of the best. Like the previous video said, the quality, right? Quality over quantity. And I think Gilbert's connections really, really stand out, as well as some of his other team leads over at Quant, to say the least. This is going to take about roughly 2 minutes and 19 seconds, and then we will come right back.
My name is Gilbert, CEO at Quant. So I'm here today as excited as you can be. I've been waiting since 2008 to create a digital pound. I was at the Treasury during the financial crisis, seeing the Satoshi paper weeks after it was released, saw the potential, and got the rest of government on it. So we've been looking at this as the first pretty much the first government in the world to officially look at the technology weeks after it was released. So for me personally, this is a transformational moment. These evolution in systems only happens every 30 years. Right now, we're at the forefront of digital assets being integrated into financial systems. And if you look at payments globally, domestic and cross-border, there's only 56 countries that are doing real-time payments. And it's quite a long transition, as Will said, to go from cash to check and batch payments to real-time and quite expensive. But we're able to actually update global financial systems to digital assets to a modernized version to make the money that people use serve us better, because we're in a digital age. And if you look at society, we've evolved into a very digital society, especially with COVID, and money needs to evolve with us. And so the same way, our phones and our data can roam the world and work in any country, we kind of need our money to do the same. And having digital assets, CBDCs, and the UK's digital pound gives us access and makes money fit for the future. And I'm really excited to be here. We're quite active in this space. We've been working on standards, establishing the ISO standard in 2015, and more recently the MIT IETF standard that we called ODAP, Open Digital Asset Protocol. We're here to foster this adoption of blockchain and DLT and make CBDCs embedded within the financial system. It's not here to replace the financial system, and crypto and everything has its place, but digital assets and CBDCs specifically, they're here to evolve and complement the financial system. And we're looking forward to making that happen at Quant. Thank you.
So there you go. I mean, one thing I really want to point out, because I actually heard people on our live show at Crypto Talk Now, by the way, at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, every single day of the week. Highly recommend checking it out. But, it's mentioned to us before this particular argument when it comes to Quant. Like we'll mention the likes of ALBT. We'll mention the likes of LCX. We'll mention the likes of some of these other ones and so on, right? And, a couple of people have mentioned, those are already interoperable. So if they're already interoperable, why do they need the likes of Quant? And I think that's the key thing, is that Quant, which you're of course going to see here in a moment with another particular clip, but if anything, Quant basically will make it even that much more interoperable. You may not think so, but sometimes some of these blockchains feel as though that they already are, and when in reality there is that's not the case, right? Some of these ones particularly, they may seem as though they're fully interoperable, but when you get down to the nitty-gritty of it and so on, you find out there's certain barriers. With Quant, they're really standing out as being the one in which accomplishes some of these things, in which some of these blockchains may feel as though, like I mentioned, they're fully interoperable, but in reality, they're just partially interoperable. Now, again, for the record, I'm not stating that is 100% the case with the likes of ALBT and some of these other ones. But if anything, you're going to hear the particular argument for this, and if anything, it will give you a bigger perspective on just that. Now, another thing I want to mention is what Gilbert mentioned at the end of this particular clip. It's not that, for instance, the digital pound is going to replace the entire monetary system, right? A lot of people feel as though, the doom and gloom of all this is going to be something that just completely replaces it. And don't get me wrong, I could totally get you when it comes to that particular argument. My thing is this, like he mentions, is to complement. If anything, give you an extra option, or if anything, give banks an extra option, save them tons of money, and if anything, make it more secure and a lot more faster. That simply makes sense. But again, I understand the other argument. You give governments too much power, they'll take away our current power. Again, I don't want to make this a giant conspiracy, but when you hear the likes of Gilbert Verdian literally mention it's not to replace it, it's to complement it, it does make you think, okay, this kind of makes sense. All right, a little bit more in regards to our particular coverage. So, of course, I show you the backgrounds of some of these particular people. Something I want to show you is basically this right here. And it's just a quick clip from this guy right here. Of course, is part of the Quant team, who is the CTO, I believe. And for instance, it says interoperability is one of the biggest problems we face today, of course, in blockchain. Quant will complement everyone who joins Overledger to connect as one. Big players looking at different interoperability solutions will basically look, at interoperability solutions to see, where Quant is basically. Quant is any interoperability to be the deal breaker here. Again, like it mentions, big players looking at different interoperability solutions. It's basically just that. Quant, again, I'm going to reiterate this, will complement everyone who joins Overledger to connect as one. Now this, of course, is just about 3-4 seconds, but listen to what he has to say here in regards to all this. We're going to take about 34 seconds, and again, we'll be right back.
There's tons of projects that think their way is the only way, right? So particularly in the blockchain world, each of the camps think interoperability is everybody uses their system. And we were at Sibos last week, which is the Swift conference, which is roughly the size of RSA. We spoke to a lot of people there. They are mostly holding off because there is no interoperability. People are doing a lot of pilots, a lot of POCs, and they're waiting to see if there's a winner or if there's a standard piece of interoperability. So there's a few people going live in Q1 at the moment, but this is what everyone's waiting for, and it's the technical standard that we need. There's tons of projects that are.
So just like you mentioned right there, I mean, again, like I was previously mentioning before we got to this particular clip, other ones out there, let's face it, those who represent other blockchains and whatnot, they do have the attitude. I'm not saying this is necessarily a bad thing or anything, but that, what they have is good enough. And that is interoperable and so on. But again, a lot of those, when it comes to push comes to shove, or when it comes to testing phases, those particular ones are basically pilots, right? They're not ones in which have completely come fully tested and so on. And I'm glad, for instance, he pointed that out. A little bit more before we wrap up today's video. How about this right here? So Quant, sometimes, people are seeing these prices, and I myself, seen it basically within the last few days go down as low as was it 94? Currently speaking, we're at roughly 122. Okay. And it's sitting at 31st overall. The volume is currently down, sitting at a $1.4 billion market cap. And if anything, I mean, some people, of course, were hoping for back to even 100 or less. But I still personally believe when it comes to this whole thing with ISO 222 coming up in March, because let's face it, that's supposed to be the mandatory time for all that. That is the flip of the switch, if you will. And if anything, I think we're going to be priced out of Quant. So, I mean, my thing is I'm going to continue to dollar cost average to reach some of my own personal goals for my Quant holdings. Some other people have much more bigger goals as far as that. I've met people who've basically mentioned, they want to have at least 100 Quant, if not more, or some guys even already have it. Whatever the case be, I do think that we're eventually going to be priced out of it. And you're not going to see these particular prices for much longer, especially when it comes to this whole shift of the click of the switch, if you will, or flip of the switch, especially when you got the things like this. Circulating supply sitting at about 12 million, and then the max supply and total supply is only about a couple more million more than that. So guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up today's video in regards to our Quant coverage. Like, comment, subscribe if you haven't done so already, and please, by all means, hit that bell notification. And it's just that, everybody. Really appreciate you guys watching our Quant coverage that we have here basically almost daily. And we're getting a pretty decent following with this, getting a good reception and so on. So again, shout out to everybody who is in Quant or has basically been following here. Us here at CTN and so on. So there you have it. May you all have a blessed day, everybody, and we'll see you on the next one.